Hey, appreciate you for the follow. Hold on, wait, what is that? Let me see. Be unto my Mabel. I'm reading this all wrong. I know I am. But appreciate you for the follow. Sorry for me being a little bit slow, not being able to read your name right. But I'm definitely gonna follow you back if I don't already. Let me go ahead and flip this camera. Supposed to be live on the DGTA page too as well, but we work the bugs out as we go along. Welcome everybody to another episode of Expansion Pack. I'm your host, Dan F. Man. It's good to be in here with y'all today. It's beautiful Monday. If it ain't sunny out there where you at, it's sunny where I'm at. So let's at least be happy about something. Find something to be happy about and hold on to them. Oh, I just gonna play me some 2K. We're gonna do the usual planning and execution talks here on Monday. Let me know if my levels is off or anything is not right. I don't know what's up with my. They say I'm live, but it's just a black screen. Let me see something. Y'all just bear with me for a second, for 2 seconds. Yeah, it didn't even get no title. It didn't get nothing. I'm gonna let this whole thing run on there too. I'm not even gonna stop it. All right, so like I said, today we talking about planning and execution like we do every Monday. I appreciate y'all for tuning in, and we're gonna get our first message queued up here right now. All right, let me turn this down some. All right, here we go.
I recently read the book The Four Disciplines of Execution by Sean Covey, Chris McChesney, and Jim Hewling. Everyone has good ideas, but what's rare is the ability to execute on those ideas. A good idea without execution is worthless. Authors Sean, Chris, and Jim surveyed over 200,000 business leaders from around the world to understand why they routinely failed to execute on their good ideas and important goals. They found that leaders and teams who routinely fail to execute on their good ideas are completely consumed by what they call the whirlwind. The whirlwind is the chaos of day-to-day life. It's the reason you get to the end of the week and wonder, wow, I was busy all week, but I don't think I accomplished a damn thing. It's the endless stream of incoming messages. It's the problems that show up unexpectedly that you need to address. Everything in the whirlwind seems urgent. And when everything seems urgent, those important but less urgent ideas get forgotten and left behind. The only way to reliably execute your good ideas and important goals is to have a system of execution that can withstand the power of the whirlwind. Authors Sean, Chris, and Jim have identified 4 disciplines that make up a system of execution that can help you reliably execute no matter how chaotic the whirlwind gets around you. Discipline number 1. Focus on your wig. At any given moment at a major airport, there are planes taxiing around the airport, there are planes taking off, and there are planes coming to the airport that need to land soon. If you were an air traffic controller, you would need to manage all those planes, and each passenger in those planes would tell you that their plane is the most important plane. But even though each of those planes is important and urgent to those people, only one plane is wildly important to you right now, and that's the plane that's coming in to land right now. Focusing on and landing this one plane successfully makes all other planes seem secondary. You need to start approaching work like this air traffic controller, keeping all your urgent and merely important goals on your radar, and doing the minimum you can to prevent them from crashing or getting out of control, and then using all your remaining energy to successfully execute and land your wildly important goal, your WIG. To find this wildly important goal, just ask yourself, if everything else remained at its current level of performance, what one achievement would make everything else seem secondary? Once you have a good idea of what you think that achievement might be, frame it in the following format: from X to Y by Z. As in, my wildly important goal is to raise my monthly sales revenue from $6,000 to $12,000 a month by December 31st.
Okay.
Discipline number 2, measure lead behaviors. Let's say your goal is to lose 20 pounds, so you go on a diet. During the first 2 weeks, you step on the scale every day to see if your weight has changed.
Hey, what's up,
Day
O?
after day, the scale hardly moves.
This is good. This is good talk.
How
right
likely
here.
are
You
you to
gotta
stick
hit
to your diet? If a metric that you're measuring isn't changing, like weight in this case, your execution will suffer. The problem is most results that we want to change, like losing weight, increasing revenue, or growing the number of subscribers, all has a lag effect. There's a considerable amount of lag time between the actions we take and the results we want to see. During that lag time, if you only measure your lag result, a metric that will hardly change in the short term, regardless of how much action you take, you'll quickly lose focus on your wildly important goal and stop executing.
Right.
Without any signs of improvement, our execution will suffer. Therefore, we need to measure something that we can influence and improve every day or every week. What we need to measure are lead behaviors. Lead behaviors are those critical day-to-day activities that ultimately lead to our desired result. If you had a blog and you wanted to get more subscribers, you shouldn't just measure the increase in subscribers each week. You should measure the number of words you write each day and the number of articles that you post each week.
Right. Yes, sir.
If you're a salesperson, you shouldn't just measure the number of sales you're getting each week. You should also measure the number of daily prospect calls you're making and the number of follow-up emails you're delivering. These lead behavior measurements are something that you can increase every day. And when you increase these metrics every day, you increase your engagement and execution. And when you focus on proven and validated lead behaviors, achieving your lag result will simply be a matter of time. Discipline number 3, put up a scoreboard. Let's say you get together with friends on Saturday and go play soccer in the park. You make teams, you set up the nets, and then you start the game. But 30 minutes into that game, some of your friends are losing interest because no one remembered to keep score. But what if everyone on your team knew they were down by 1 goal with 5 minutes left to play? Do you think they would still be disengaged and walking off the field? The authors say people play differently when they know the score. It doesn't matter if you're playing soccer or executing a work project. Knowing the score generates a will to win, and the will to win fuels execution. If we aren't frequently reminded of the score, our will to win will fade, our execution will suffer, and the whirlwind will consume all of our attention. The best way to be reminded of the score is to put up a scoreboard in your office that is simple and easy to see. You should be able to look at this scoreboard and know if you're winning or losing in 5 seconds or less. It should only include 3 things: your WIG, your leg measurements, and your lead measurements. If your WIG was increased monthly sales revenue from $6,000 to $12,000 by December 31st, then your leg measurement would be sales, and your lead measurement would be number of calls or hours spent making Facebook marketing videos. If you're increasing your lead measurement day after day or week after week, then you feel like you're winning. And once you see a lead measurement corresponding to an increase in a leg measurement, then you verify that you're winning, and your execution and commitment goes through the roof. Discipline number 4, schedule weekly accountability talks. Have you ever been on a project team at school or at work where you need to verbally report on your status and make commitments each week? I have. And it's amazing how much more action I take when I know my teammates will hold me accountable to what I say. As a project manager at an engineering firm, I needed to sit around a table every Monday morning and remind my peers of what I said I would do, what I did, and what I plan to do this week to hit my next project milestone. It was a powerful routine of accountability. I didn't always like it, but it was amazing how much my execution increased before and after each meeting. In the book, the authors promote the practice of regular face-to-face meetings with your peers or teammates where you state your goals, instead of your boss or your teammates telling you what your goals are. When you verbally commit to your own goals in front of your peers or teammates, who will support you but hold you accountable, you have a strong desire to honor your word and protect your reputation. These are powerful motivators that cause you to focus on your wildly important goal and prevent yourself from being consumed by the whirlwind. By implementing these 4 disciplines into your work week, you can get yourself and your team to reliably execute your greatest ideas and your wildly important goals, no matter how chaotic the whirlwind of your day-to-day responsibilities might be. That was the core message that I gathered from the 4 disciplines of execution. If you're finding it hard to execute important goals, I highly recommend it. If you would like a 1-page PDF summary of insights that I gathered from this book, just click the link below and I'd be happy to email it to you. If you already subscribe to the free Productivity Game email newsletter, this PDF is sitting in your inbox. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a productive week.
Yes, sir. All right. Appreciate everybody who joined and is still joining or maybe still watching. Today we're talking about planning and execution. That was a productivity game on YouTube, talking about the 4 disciplines of execution by C. McChesney, S. Covey, and Jay Huling. Good to be back with y'all here on this Monday. Let's get some good planning topics talked about right now. I don't want to speak too much. I just want to listen to some of these things. What's up, Zanita67? Great day to you as well. Let's see what else we got. This is How to Execute 5 Essential Skills by Kim
I am
Perry.
here to tell you how to master the one skill that will drive your success more than anything else. This has worked for me, and it can work for you too. And I can tell you, it's not IQ. How many smart people do you know that aren't successful? And it's not hard work either. How many people do you know working day in and day out and getting nowhere?
What's up, that cat guy?
This is what we'd hope that success looked like, up and to the right, a straight line. Does everyone wish that this looked like success? The reality is, this is not what it looks like. And it's not what it looked like for me. I started really far down here on the bottom, and years of trials and tribulations. Somewhere up here, still going through, somewhere up here, hopefully make it to the end someday. How many of you have ever been broke? Or stuck? Didn't know what was next? I have been broke too. This is the bank account. And I have actually the balance sheet that I sent to my parents showing I had $366 to my name. I was like, I am broke. What am I going to do? And today, I'm the CEO of a global technology company. I've invested, as Simon said, more than 70 companies that have had exits, 12 of them for over $500 million. And one of those companies, and one of those investments actually IPO'd, and it went over $1 billion on the first day of trading. Thank you. So let me tell you a little bit about myself before I tell you that secret, which is number 1, I was not born wealthy. My parents were entrepreneurs. I grew up in Portland, Oregon. At the dinner table, we didn't talk about the sports I played or my day at school. We talked about the challenges they had every single day. It was insane. And the memories is just challenging. And when you look back at having to go through the ups and downs of two entrepreneurs, not just one. It made a huge impact on my life. So when I graduated from college, I went to LA and I worked for a hot internet startup. This is at the start of the .com. I was so lucky. The first company, it raised $1 million, then it raised $120 million. I hired and I called every friend I knew. I'm like, we are going to be .com millionaires. It's going to be huge. You have to come work with me. It was incredible. But unfortunately, nearly 2 years later, the company went bankrupt. And again, I was broke. In an instant, I had to lay off my friends and eventually myself. And I felt like such a failure. Have you ever been there when someone pushes delete on your career, your identity, your future, and your income? In one moment, it all disappeared. Hitting rock bottom really makes you realize what you want in life. And I didn't want to be broke again. I wanted to control my own destiny. I wanted to have freedom, and I wanted to be my own boss. I wanted to start my own company. Had I ever started a company? No, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea. But I did know I could move to Hawaii with my boyfriend, now husband, and live rent-free. Oh, poor me. Right? No, not really. This is what you think it looked like. It was amazing. I'm like rent-free in his apartment. This is awesome. This is great. This is where I can start my digital company. But let me tell you, it did not look like this. It actually, this is before digital cameras, looked like this. This is me and him at my kitchen table. For 3 years I sat there. I didn't go to the beach. I didn't learn the hula. And I definitely didn't learn to surf. I sat here at this kitchen table. And eventually, with hard work and perseverance, that company turned into a $100 million company, which I sold 2008, sold again in 2014 for $235 million.
Hey, appreciate you, YDKLJ.
I went from being broke to working at my kitchen table to being an entrepreneur, to then wanting to invest in other individuals to help them achieve success. Those companies have sold to leading brands like Apple, Intuit, Singtel, and Tinder. I wanted to share with others what I had learned, and I asked myself, of these companies, what made them different? What makes the successful people different than anyone else? And I started to realize these people have one thing in common. One thing. And it's what I like to call the execution factor. This doesn't sound very sexy, but that's it. Execution. An idea is only as good as how well you can execute it. I see dozens of ideas a week. A lot of them look the same. And I believe that execution is a skill that can be learned. You can learn it. And I'm here to help you learn it today. So, did everyone get a card on the way in? Yeah?
Let's go.
Okay, great. This card has 5 traits on the back, because there's 5 essential traits that you need to know to master execution. So get your card. First is vision. Second is passion. The third is action. The fourth is resilience. And the fifth is relationships. And we're going to execute right now. Are you ready? Great. Vision. Vision is about having a North Star. It's about having a compass from where you are today to success. Did you know that there's a professor at Virginia Tech who says that people who write down their goals are 9 times as likely to be successful over their lifetime as people they don't? 9 times. Why wouldn't you do this? Seems easy. When I sold my last company, I wrote down my goal, as you can see here. I put it on my bathroom mirror, taped it, got blown off with my hairdryer a few times, went down the drain, but I kept it up here. And every day I looked at it for 9 months, trying to get the deal over the line. And eventually, my dream became a reality. I was crystal clear on what I wanted to accomplish. It's amazing, huh? So the first thing for you is to get crystal clear on your North Star. What is your vision? You can start big, or you can start small. What is one thing you want to accomplish right now? And write it down. Once you have your vision, you need to be emotionally connected to it. And you need passion. Passion is the second trait you need to master in order to be successful. Did you know that passion comes from the Latin word for pain? So what is something you're so passionate about that you would gladly suffer for? When I was 11, I had a passion for horses. I loved horses. And I had visions that I'd jump and ride and win awards. But we did not have enough to do horseback ridings to be that great. For 2 a week, and I went to the barn, not 2 a week, 2 a month, sorry. 2 a week would be amazing. I'd actually probably be a horseman, not speaking up here. So I went to the barn, and I asked them, could I work at the stable to get a horseback riding lesson? And they gave me 7 hours of cleaning up the stables for a 1-hour ride. I thought that was an incredible deal. Looking back, I think they got a better deal on that one, but I would have done anything to ride the horse. So ask yourself, what is something that you're so passionate about that you would gladly suffer for?
Yes, ma'am.
That you get up early, you'd stay late, you'd work the weekend. What is that? You have to be emotionally connected to it. So now you have your vision, and you're passionate about it. Now what? Third trait. Action. You have to be willing to take that first step. And it doesn't have to be right. Just one step. When I started my first company, I was scared. I had no idea what I was doing. I was uncertain. I was terrified of failure. But I embraced the fear and I did it anyway. So ask yourself, what is one action that you will take to accomplish your vision?
Ain't nobody shooting free
Just a
throws.
simple one. Start small and write that down. So now that you know what the action you're going to take, this is what's going to happen next. I can guarantee it. Something's going to go wrong. And that's why I need the fourth trait. The fourth trait is resilience. This is the ability to adapt and overcome obstacles and roadblocks and thrive in change. Nothing ever goes according to plan. Ever. I can attest to that. I think Rocky is the best example of resilience. He gets knocked down all the time, but he always gets back up. And when you think of the resilience you will need to accomplish your vision, you need the mental mindset to be able to always get back up. And I think it's important that if you know what are some of the obstacles that could stand in your way or could set you back, and you can actually visualize them, then when they arrive, you're more prepared for them. So write down what one obstacle standing in the way of your vision could be. And when it happens to you, you'll become more resilient. And you'll know you too can overcome that. You already knew that might happen. And when you're being resilient, the fifth defining trait that you're going to need to master is relationships. Nobody is successful alone. I haven't been. It's important to build healthy, inspiring, supportive relationships. The most significant factor in any person's life is the people. And this has been true for me. Did you know that if you change only one thing in your life, the people, you'll have increased your chances of success by 10 times? 10 times. Every year I do a life audit. What's a life audit? Well, I make a list of all the people I spend time with. Then I put a plus if they energize, inspire me, and support me to achieve my dreams. I put a minus if they drain me and suck the energy out of me every time I'm with them. Then I make a conscious decision to spend more time with the people with the pluses, less time with the people with the minuses. Seems very simple. Also seems kind of harsh, I know. Just eliminating toxic people from your life. But it's been very, very successful for me. And I think it would be very successful for you. So write down 3 people you spend time with. This is a simple exercise. First name. And put a plus or minus
Hey,
next,
Carter,
next
thanks
to them.
for joining
For
up.
wherever they are going,
Chilling
you
with
are
me.
going too. So
Let me
make
share this
conscious
out.
decisions to surround yourself with supportive individuals. Thank you, everyone.
So once again, we talking about planning and execution here today, every Monday. And I'm trying to keep, let's get something more interesting. Planning skills. Don't ask me why I always go to my boy Joe Rogan, but
We believe in a future where every person has the opportunity not just to get
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Some happy little place where, you know, someone's feeding you peeled grapes. That isn't what it is. It's more like more like victory on the honorable battlefield or something like that.
Yeah, the perception that people have of ultimate success and ultimate happiness is, it seems motivated by what they don't have, rather than an understanding of what success and happiness really is. Their idea is that one day I'm going to go and I'm going to be in my golden years, and I'm just going to be able to sit around and do nothing and tell everybody to fuck off. You won't be happy at all.
I talked to one of the people that I was working with who had a vision for retirement. I said, well, what's your vision for retirement? Well, I see myself in the beach, you know, some tropical country drinking margaritas. And I thought, first, that's not a plan. That's a travel poster. It's like, okay, let's walk through this. All right, so you go down to this tropical country and you go sit on the beach and you have a margarita. It's like, okay, well, how many margaritas? Like 10? Okay, so gonna do that for 6 months?
You'll be dead.
Yeah, well, you'll be this like pathetic, sunburned, like
Fat.
yeah,
Yeah.
unhappy,
Yeah.
hungover, cirrhotic.
pain.
Yeah, it's like that's your vision.
Dehydrated.
So how long can you have a margarita on a beach? Like maybe you can do that once every 6 months for like 10 minutes, something like that. It's not a vision.
It's true, but when you are working and slaving away, you think about that beach with your feet up,
Yeah.
and the waiter comes over. Would you like another margarita, Mr. Peterson?
Yeah.
Yes, I would.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're like,
absolutely.
all right,
but
baby.
Right, exactly. But it's like this 16-year-old fantasy of
hey,
paradise.
Timothy
It's
Davis
like,
III,
yes.
appreciate
And
you
it just
for
doesn't
joining
work
up.
out. So
Yeah.
and the thing is that the thing that sustains people through life really is the lifting of a worthwhile burden. It's something like that.
Yeah.
And it's partly because we're social animals, right? It's like we're evolved to be used to people around us because they're much more likely to let us live if we're like that.
Yes.
So, and it's been very fun especially talking to young men about this. It's like, well, and that's the other thing too, is I think the world is full of darkness, let's say. And we could say each of us have a little bit of light. And if we release that light, if we let it shine properly, Christ, it's too cliched to go on with in some sense, but the world is a lesser place if you do not reveal from within yourself what you have to reveal. And the fact that the world is a lesser place actually turns out not to be trivial. Like if you aren't everything you could be, more people will die, more people will suffer, more evil will be unconstrained, more tyranny will reign, more chaos will remain chaotic and dangerous, all of that.
Do you mean this by this in the sense of like the old proverb of the wings of a butterfly fluttering become a hurricane?
It's something similar to that, but it can even be more local. It's like your family is more messed up than it could be if you were less messed up than you are.
Right.
So if you just got your act together, like 10% more, your family would be 1% better.
Right.
It's like, well, do it.
And that would ripple off into the people that they interact with.
Yes, and it ripples fast.
Yes.
That's the other thing that's so cool is that, like, people think, well, there's 7 billion of us, and each of us is just this separate dust mote, like floating in the cosmos, and what the hell difference does it make what you do anyways? It's like, that is not how we're connected. It's like, you're the center of a network, and you know way more people than this, but let's say typically, you're going to know 1,000 people in your life, well enough to have an impact on them, okay? And each of those 1,000 people is going to know 1,000 people. So you're 1 step from 1,000,000 and 2 steps from 1,000,000,000. And we are networked, technically. That's how human interactions work. And so when you do something that you shouldn't do, it's worse than you think. And when you do something that you should do, it's better than you think.
Okay.
And so you think, well, this is why I've been telling people, well, clean up your room. It's like, well, your room is actually networked too. It's not that easy to clean up your room, to set it. So you want your room to be set up so that when you walk in there, it tells you to be better than you generally are. It's organized, it's got direction, everything's in its place. You try to do that in a chaotic household.
Oh,
I've watched people do this because I had students do these sorts of things as assignments. I'd say, look, pick a small moral goal, clean up your room, and just write down what happens as a consequence. So maybe these are students in a chaotic household. The whole place is a bloody mess. No one's taking any responsibility for anything. And so they decide they're going to start to clean up their room. And then the people in the household notice. Well, the first thing they do is get pissed off. It's like, who do you think you are? Like, you think you're better than us? Why do you think this is worthwhile? Who died and made you God? All of that. So just by trying to organize this little part of their life, they immediately run into the people whose actions they're casting in a dim light by trying to improve themselves to some degree. They might have to have like a thorough war in their household to be allowed to do something as simple as keep the room orderly. You'll find out very rapidly that A, that's way more difficult than it sounds, and B, that the consequences of it are far more far-reaching than people think. So that's quite fun. No, because maybe part of it is that like everything around you is full of potential. Everything. Maybe more potential than you could ever possibly utilize. And so maybe all you have is this little rat hole of a room in some rundown place in the world. It's like, fix it up. There's more there than you think. See what happens if you fix it up. And you'll fix yourself up simultaneously because you'll have to get disciplined in order to fix up the room. And then you have a fixed up room and you'll be a more fixed up person. It's like, you think that nothing will happen as a consequence of that? It's like all hell will break loose as a consequence of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's really worth trying.
It is worth trying, and it's a concept that seems alien to people. But if you think about it, it makes sense.
Well, people don't take what they have right in front of them seriously enough. It's like the wasting time thing. They don't do the arithmetic. You know, and they also don't understand. They devalue what they have right in front of them. Like another client I worked with was having a hard time putting his kid to bed at night. And so we did the arithmetic. It's like, well, I'm fighting with my kid for 45 minutes a night trying to get him to go to bed. Okay, so let's analyze that. All right, so what does that mean? Well, it means that both of you end the day upset. That's not so good. Right. Why would you want that? It means that you're spending 45 minutes fighting when you could spend 20 minutes doing something positive, like reading to him, say. It means that you don't get to spend that time with your wife, so she's not very happy with you. Plus, you're annoyed because you don't see her. Plus, you blame it on the kid because he's the proximal cause. It's like, that's pretty damn ugly. And then let's do the arithmetic. It's like 7 days a week, 45 minutes a day. Let's call that 5 hours, 20 hours a week, 240 hours in a year. You're spending a month and a half of work weeks fighting with your 4-year-old son. Think you're going to like him? You don't like anyone you spend a month and a half a year fighting with. It's a bad idea. Yeah. Fix it. It's important. Get him to bed. Make it peaceful. You do it like these things that repeat every single day. That's a motif in this book too.
Yes, sir.
Your life isn't margaritas on a beach in Jamaica. That happens now and then. Those are exceptions.
Sorry, TikTok.
Your life is how your wife greets you at the door when you come home every day.
Hope you're having a good day.
Because that's like 10 minutes a day. Your life is how you treat each other over the breakfast table. Because that's an hour and a half or an hour every single day. You get those mundane things right, those things you do every day. You concentrate on them and you make them pristine. It's like you got 80% of your life put together. These little things that are right in front of us, they're not little. That's the first thing. They are not little, and they're hard to set right. And if you set them right, it has a rippling effect, and fast too, way faster than people think.
All right. we're talking planning and execution right now. That was Jordan Peterson on Joe Rogan, the Joe Rogan Experience, talking about sorting your life. So planning and execution is simple, simply stated is what I mean. So I just want to keep on playing more and more videos. Let me see. I don't want to talk too much. Hey, my man. Here you go, John Peterson again. Or Jordan Peterson. Why did I say John?
Picture this. You're sitting at home alone watching YouTube videos, wondering why you can't find the motivation to do the things you need or...
And it's also very much worth thinking about with regards to setting up your life in general. It's like, if you concentrate solely on your career, you can get a long way in your career. And I would say that that's a strategy that a minority of men preferentially do. That's all they do. They work like 70, 80 hours a week. They go flat out on their career. They're staking everything on the small probability of exceptional status in a narrow domain. But it's hard on them. They don't have a life. It's very difficult for them to have a family. They don't know how to take any leisure activity. Like, they get very one-dimensional. Now, it may be that unidimensionality is the price you have to pay to be exceptional at one thing, right? Because if you're going to be something like a genius level mathematician and you want to do that or a scientist, say, it's like you're in your lab all the time, you're working 70 hours a week or 80 hours a week, you're smart, you're dedicated, you're unidimensional, and that's how you get to beat all the other people who are doing that. It's the only way. But the problem is you don't get a life. Now, if you love being a scientist and you have that kind of focus of mind, well, first of all, you're a rare person, and second, you're going to pay for it. But fine, more power to you. But it's a risky business to do that. You sacrifice a lot for it. And I would say most often, if you're speaking about having a healthy life, that isn't what you do. You spread yourself out more. So, you have a family, you have some things that you do outside of work that are meaningful to you and useful. You have a network of friends. Those 3 things alone, or 4 things alone, are plenty to keep you well oriented. And then if one of those things collapses, everything doesn't go. Now, the price you pay for that is the more you strive to optimize that balance, the less likely you are to be fantastically successful at any single one of them. But you might have a very, if you consider your life as a whole, that might be a winning strategy. One of the things Carl Jung said, I really liked this. He thought that men went after perfection and women went after wholeness. So they're different value. They're different. There's something different at the top of the value hierarchy. So perfection would be stake it all on one thing and look for radical success. Not that all men do that, because they don't, but we're talking about extremes, at least with regards to the men that do that. The wholeness idea is more like, well, I want one thing in my life to be 150%, or I want 5 things in my life to be 80%. Well, there's a lot more richness in a life where you have 5 things operating at 80%, but you're not operating at any of them at 150%. So, and I really believe this because I've watched men and women go through their careers now for a long period of time, and one of the things there's lots of things that produce this, but one of the things that I've noticed is that mostly women in their 30s bail out of unidimensional careers. They won't do them. They won't put in the 80 hours a week that they would have to put in order to dominate that particular area. And it isn't, the reason that they won't do it is because they decide it's not worth it. And no wonder, because why would that be worth it? You have to ask yourself that. It's like, well, you want to be an outstanding scientist. It's like, okay, really, that's what you want, because that means that's what you do. Because you're competing with other people. They're smart, they're hardworking, and if you want to be at the top, you have to be smarter and work harder than any of them. And working hard means working long hours. It also means working diligently, but in the final analysis, it's also an additive issue. if I'm smart and hardworking and I can crank out for 70 hours a week and you do it for 30, it's like in 2 years I'm so far ahead of you, you will never ever catch up. So anyways, and I think partly maybe part of the reason too that women are oriented that way more than men, I think there's two reasons. One is socioeconomic status does not make women more attractive on the mating market, but it does make men more attractive. And the second is women's time frame is compressed, right? Because guys can always say, well, I'll have kids later, and they can say that till they're like 80. Whereas women, it's like, no way, man, you got to get it together by the time you're, let's say 40, but really probably by 35, but definitely by 40, because otherwise it ain't happening. And that's bloody dreadful. Like the most unhappy people you ever see, no. No. One of the common routes to extreme unhappiness is to want children and not have them. I wouldn't recommend that. You know, you see couples who are in their 30s. 1 couple in 3 over the age of 30 has fertility problems. That's defined as inability to conceive after 1 year of trying. 1 in 3. So it's worth thinking about, because people are very, very unhappy if they want to have kids and then they can't. Man, you're in the medical mill for 10 years if that's what happens to you. So, okay, so anyways, back to this. What could you do to improve yourself? Well, let's step one step backwards. The first question might be, why should you even bother improving yourself? And I think the answer to that is something like, so you don't suffer any more stupidly than you have to. And maybe so others don't have to either. It's something like that. You know, like there's a real injunction at the bottom of it. It's not some casual self-help doctrine. It's that if you don't organize yourself properly, you'll pay for it, and in a big way, and so will the people around you. Now, and you could say, well, I don't care about that, but that's actually not true. You actually do care about that, because if you're in pain, you will care about it. And so you do care about it, even if it's just that negative way, you know. It's very rare that you can find someone who's in excruciating pain who would ever say, well, it would be no better if I was out of this. Sort of pain is one of those things that brings the idea that it would be better if it didn't exist along with it. It's incontrovertible. So you get your act together so that there isn't any more stupid pain around you than necessary. Well, so then the question might be, well, how would you go about getting your act together? And the answer to that, and this is a phenomenological idea too, it's something like, look around for something that bothers you and see if you can fix it. So now you think, well, let's say you go into you can do this in a room. It's quite fun to do it just when you're sitting in a room, like a room, maybe your bedroom. You can sit there and just sort of meditate on it and think, okay, if I wanted to spend 10 minutes making this room better, what would I have to do? And you have to ask yourself that, right? It's not a command, it's like a genuine question. And things will pop out in the room that you know, there's a stack of papers over there that's kind of bugging you, and you know that maybe little order there would be a good thing, and you know, there's some rubbish behind your computer monitor that you haven't attended to for like 6 months, and the room would be slightly better if it was a little less dusty and the cables weren't all tangled up the same way. And like if you allow yourself just to consider the expanse in which you exist at that moment, there'll be all sorts of things that'll pop out in it that you could just fix. And you know, I might say, well, if you were coming to see me for psychotherapy, the easiest thing for us to do first would just be to get you to organize your room. You think, well, is that psychotherapy? And the answer is, well, it depends on how you conceive the limits of your being. And I would say, start where you can start. You know, if something announces itself to you, which is a strange way of thinking about it, as in need of repair, that you could repair, then hey, fix it. You fix 100 things like that, your life will be a lot different. You know, I often tell people too, fix the things you repeat every day, because people tend to think of those as trivial, right? You get up, you brush your teeth, you have your breakfast, you know, you have your routines that you go through every day. Well, those probably constitute 50% of your life. And people think, well, they're mundane, I don't need to pay attention to them. It's like, no, that's exactly wrong. The things you do every day, those are the most important things you do. Hands down. All you have to do is do the arithmetic. You figure it out right away. So 100 adjustments to your broader domain of being, and there's a lot less rubbish around, and a lot fewer traps for you to step into. And so that's in keeping with Jung's idea about erasing once you've got your mind and your emotions together, and once you're acting that out, then you can extend what you're willing to consider yourself and start fixing up the things that are part of your broader extent. Now, sometimes you don't know how to do that, so you might say, imagine you're walking down Bloor Street and there's this guy who's like alcoholic and schizophrenic and has been on the streets for 10 years. He sort of stumbles towards you and, you know, incoherently mutters something. That's a problem. And it would be good if you could fix it, but you haven't got a clue about how to fix that. You just walk around that and go find something that you could fix, because if you muck about in that, not only is it unlikely that you'll help that person, it's very likely that you'll get hurt yourself. So, you know, just because while you're experiencing things announce themselves as in need of repair doesn't mean that it's you right then and there that should repair them. You have to have some humility. You know, you don't walk up to a helicopter that isn't working and just start tinkering away with it. You have to stay within your domain of competence. But most of the time, if people look at their lives, you know, it's a very interesting thing to do. I like the idea of the room, because you can do that at the drop of a hat. You know, you go back to where you live and sit down and think, okay, I'm going to make this place better for half an hour. What should I do? And you have to ask, and things will just pop up like mad. And it's partly because your mind is a very strange thing. As soon as you give it a name, a genuine aim, it'll reconfigure the world in keeping with that aim. That's actually how you see to begin with. And so if you set it a task, especially, you have to be genuine about it, which is why you have to bring your thoughts and emotions together, and then you have to get them in your body so you're acting consistently. You have to be genuine about the aim, but once you aim, the world will reconfigure itself around that aim, which is very strange. And it's technically true. You know, the best example of that, you have all seen this video where you watch the basketballs being tossed back and forth between members of the white team versus the black team, and while you're doing that, a gorilla walks up into the middle of the video and you don't see it. It's like, you know, if you thought about that experiment for about 5 years, that would be about the right amount of time to spend thinking about it. Because what it shows you is that you see what you aim at. And that, man, if you can get one thing through your head as a consequence of even being in university, that would be a good one. You see what you aim at. And so, because one inference you might draw from that is, be careful what you aim at, right? What you aim at determines the way the world manifests itself to you. And so if the world is manifesting itself in a very negative way, one thing to ask is, are you aiming at the right thing? Now, you know, I'm not trying to reduce everybody's problems to an improper aim. People get cut off at the knees for all sorts of reasons. You know, they get sick, they have accidents. There's a random element to being, that's for sure. And so you don't want to take anything, even that particular phrase, too far. You want to bind it with the fact that random things do happen to people, but it's still a great thing to ask.
We're gonna keep on trucking along. Let's get some more execution talks in here.
I mean, it's crazy to think about it. Like, it used to cost millions to advertise on TV, and now, because of streaming, even with $50, I mean...
A lottery ticket is tantalizing because it just seems so simple. Theoretically, there's a combination of numbers or scratches you could put on this ticket that would unlock literally billions of dollars. All you have to do is get the correct combo, and bam, just like that, your new life begins. Theoretically, the same exists for your life too. There's probably a simple sequence of moves you could do today. Say the right things, be in the right place at just the right time, with just the right people. And bam, all your dreams literally come true. The only problem is, you have no idea what these secret steps are. Considering the infinite realm of possibilities, it's likely you won't just stumble upon this without some sort of plan. But just for a second, imagine there's a little blue genie sitting in your ear, whispering to you, guiding you each second of your life, telling you the exact step-by-step sequence you would need to do to achieve literally anything. But that's basically what planning is, right? We envision a future, some better life for ourselves, and we strategize the moves needed to get there. Only problem is, most people suck at it, using systems that are either way too basic or way too rigid. For me, getting into Harvard for undergrad, Yale for medical school, and Harvard again for residency was no accident. It was strategically planned and mapped out, week after week, month after month. What I'm about to tell you is the closest thing you're going to get to having a little genie in your ear. And with this power, you too can achieve literally anything. To start, let's talk about a commonly talked about framework. It goes by many names. Only thing though, there's a huge problem with it. Let me explain. Anything you do in life falls into one of 4 quadrants. Quadrant number 1 is filled with stuff that's both important and urgent. Sounds great, right? Actually, this is not where you want to be. Let me explain. Most people start in quadrant 1 until tired, inevitably falling into quadrant number 4, mindlessly attending to the non-urgent and non-important stuff, like cleaning out your email inbox or doom scrolling TikTok. You goof around here until you're ready to go back to quadrant number 1. Because guilt? Or because you've now consumed the entire internet? Oh, did someone just text you? Is that a new email in your inbox? Hooray! You're saved. Can't help but want to look, right? In your moment of weakness, you make a detour into quadrant 3, focusing on the not important but apparently urgent things. And just like this, from quadrant 1 to 4 to 3 to 1, you go, running around and around like a little hamster in a wheel of life, devoid of any growth. Reality is this: quadrant 1 is just the bare minimum. Quadrant 1 is where you go put out fires, but if you're constantly holding the fire extinguisher, when do you actually hold the hammer? Furthermore, guess where the fires of quadrant 1 come from? The ignored dreams of quadrant 2. They sprout out from the ground and come to haunt you like a psycho ex-girlfriend. You see examples of this all the time. Ignore that big project and reap the consequences when it's due. Ignore quality time with your friends and family and they soon become distant strangers. Ignore the gym long enough and you'll wake up one day with a heart attack. Quadrant 2 is the magical fabled land where dreams are built. You know, the stuff that's good for you, but because it's not urgent, you never make time for. Imagine yourself as a box factory. A day's worth of work is 50 boxes. But tomorrow, the boss says he needs 100 boxes. Uh-oh, sounds important and urgent, right? You don't want to get fired, so you grit your teeth and force it to happen. From simple to-dos, phone reminder systems, to micromanaged hour-by-hour planners, your mindset is always the same. Learn another productivity hack to squeeze more juice from each day. What if instead of being a better worker, you became a better factory? Instead of just putting out fires every day, you spend one day to make everything fireproof, and thus free up the rest of your life. This is what I call the factory boss versus factory worker mentality. Don't get lost in the weeds, strategize at a higher level. Live your life in quadrant 2. Easier said than done, I know. Quadrant 2 tasks are always foggy and unclear, there's no satisfying finish, no urgency, and no end in sight. You can always read more, learn more, work out more, and without inspiration pushing you forward, your brain is hardwired to only do things with immediate rewards, things that feel good. As chaotic as quadrant 1 is, it does indeed feel good. Checking off to-dos and putting out fires gives you an immediate sense
Get out of here.
And thus, back to assembling the boxes you go. This is the inherent problem. The 4-quadrant model gives you the conceptual framework, but it's not practical. Instead of fighting your brain's need for feel-good productivity, build a system that capitalizes on it. This is the crux of technique number 1, creating the magical quadrant of 1.5, the secret quadrant of success. 1.5 is quadrant 2's twin brother, except much sexier. Everything in it is systematically broken down into tasks that are not only actionable, practical, and urgent, but most importantly of all, carefully picked to get the highest yield for your time. To create quadrant 1.5, you first build the cloud. The cloud represents your ultimate dream. It hangs in the sky, thousands of feet in the air, all fluffy and nice. While you admire this cloud from afar, it taunts you with its tiny little raindrops. Theoretically, as long as you follow these drops all the way up, you'll reach it. Most people's plans are to do exactly this. Follow the drops from the ground up with checklists, to-dos, organizers, just good enough to collect the lowest hanging fruit. The few droplets right above your head you can touch and see. The problem is, the higher you go, the more difficult it becomes. how do you know if you're chasing the right cloud anymore? Instead, do a top-down approach. You start with the top of the cloud where the raindrops are incredibly obvious and fat. You follow them down as they splinter, seeing exactly what actions should be prioritized. This is called building the blueprint. Let's say your dream cloud is medical school. Studying the cloud, you see it's actually 4 key parts: grades, medical extracurriculars, a killer essay, and an amazing interview. The interview cloud further splinters into 2 key parts: delivery and substance. To deliver your message well, you need charisma, a confident voice, and of course, a sexy outfit. We could do an entire series on charisma alone, so I won't go any further here, but the point is to keep following these clouds all the way down until you're literally at the level of individual raindrops. Done right, you systematically understand everything you need to focus on or prioritize, expose all your blind spots and weaknesses, and gain the ability to course correct in real time. When I was trying to get into Harvard, I remember doing this exact analysis every week. How's my GPA cloud doing? My extracurricular cloud? My letters of recommendation cloud? And all its tiny mini clouds and raindrops underneath. I was a pilot, and these were the gauges and flight instruments in my cockpit. They would tell me if I was on track. Without it, I would have been flying blind. Once you have this blueprint mapped out, you begin to schedule your life around weekly goals. The crux of technique number 2. All goals have a 1-week deadline. This is how you build urgency to everything in quadrant 1.5. 1 month is conceptually too long. Knowing you have an entire month to accomplish something kills any sense of urgency and is too late for feedback. Having only 12 times a year to course correct is not good enough. On the other hand, 1 day is too short, creates anxiety and the desire to excessively micromanage. Hence, the weekly deadline for all assigned tasks, just long enough for meaningful work, but flexible enough for you to still handle the rest of your life. For example, let's say you have a medical interview in 1 month. How would the weekly goal system work? First week, 3 goals. Doesn't matter when you do it, how you do it, you just have to do it. And oh yeah, you only again have 1 week. First goal is to watch 5 videos on charisma. Second goal is to analyze 5 actors being interviewed. Pretend they are your clients and you are their public relations manager. Pretend they are paying you a crap ton of money for good feedback. So make sure you know your stuff. Third goal is to interview yourself in front of a mirror. After an hour of this, do it again. But this time, record it, watch it, and give yourself feedback. Second week, you have 2 goals. First is to come up with a list of life stories and experiences you can sprinkle into your interviews to show why you are awesome. You want these stories to be interesting, so they for sure will remember you. Second goal is to prepare for gotcha questions. Some smartass is definitely going to ask you about your top 3 weaknesses, what you regret most, maybe what your spirit vegetable is, or some stupid thing like that. You want to have thought about some of these beforehand so you don't freeze in the moment. Week 3 is mock interview time. Schedule 10 of them with people that you trust and make it as difficult as possible. Give them a list of hardball questions and ask them for real feedback. Week 4, figure out as much stuff about the interview in advance. Where it is, who it is, what makes them tick, read their articles, understand their field of interest. If their hobby is rescuing abandoned puppies, go rescue an abandoned puppy so you can relate. If you've noticed, the mini goals for each week are all actionable steps. These weekly goals are never outcome-based, like get 100 new subscribers or get an A on the exam, but rather something always within your control. Now that each week's plan is set, how do you decide what to do each day? Technique number 3, the inverted pyramid method. I've talked about this before in a previous video. Essentially, always start your day with the most important thing. Spend the most amount of time on this most important thing, and less time on each subsequent task. When done well, this entire system works on autopilot. Each week's goals keeps you flowing forward, while the inverted pyramid allows you to flexibly schedule the day-to-day in service of these goals. The beauty about this system is that it self-corrects. If I haven't made much progress on a goal, it becomes that much more urgent as the week draws to a close. Elegantly, this urgency gets crystallized within the inverted pyramid too. The more urgent a task, the more likely it is to occupy the top tier of importance for the day. This flexibility is the core feature of this system. No more micromanaging yourself with fancy calendars, reminder systems, or detailed to-dos. Focus on the cloud. Live in quadrant 1.5 and set your weekly goals in advance. Wake up each day and spend the majority of your time doing your highest yield, most important activity. When done right, you should have a clear sense of what to focus on for any given day. And that's it. Rinse and repeat until success. I hope this video was useful. If so, please subscribe, comment, and then go tell your friends, your grandma, and your pet hamster. Also, I'm doing an experiment. It's much faster for me to write my thoughts than it is to make videos, and thus I have a whole backlog of material waiting to get published. If you want to get early access to this and more, then please go to my Substack and consider becoming a paid member to support this endeavor. Link in the description. Alright. A lottery ticket is tantalizing.
When I first joined Honeybook, I was roughly making $1,500 a month. Fast forward to today, my market
read or listen to podcasts, as well as little intuitive hunches that come up. So if I'm talking to a friend or I'm reading a book and I'm like, wow, that would be an awesome idea. For example, that's where all my books came from. Wouldn't it?
Let's go one more time.
If you are like most people, there is a gap between the person you are and the person you wish to be. There are little things you think you should do and big things you ought to achieve. From working out regularly, eating healthily, learning a language, working on your novel, reading more, or simply actually doing your hobby instead of browsing Reddit. But it sometimes feels that to achieve your goals, you have to become a different person. Someone who is consistent, puts in more effort, has discipline and willpower. Maybe you've tried your hardest to be like that, and it worked for a while, until you find yourself slipping back into your old ways. In the end, you always seem to fail, and with every failed attempt, you become more and more frustrated and annoyed with yourself. If you believe success and hustle internet, it's all your own fault. If you don't succeed, you just didn't want it enough, and the failure is all you. But change is actually hard, and as with most things in life, understanding why makes things easier. The jungle. Imagine your brain as a lush and dense jungle. Moving through it, say to make a decision to do something, is like moving through an actual jungle. It's hard and it costs energy. Your brain hates expending energy, so it came up with a trick. All your actions and behaviors leave paths in the jungle of your brain. As you start doing something, you trample down some plants and make rough, improvised trails through the undergrowth. The more often you do the thing, the more pronounced the trail becomes. Over time, it turns into a path that is easier to tread, so you take it more often, and it turns into a street. As you repeat doing the thing over and over for years, the street turns into a highway. Traversing it becomes effortless, familiar, and comfortable. The more pronounced your brain highways, the more you get used to their comfort. So we continue to use them, which means we tend to do what we've always done. This is why change is hard, especially as an adult when your jungle is crisscrossed by lots of established streets and highways. To understand how those highways are built, we need to distinguish between two things: routines and habits. The things you do, routines and habits. A routine is a sequence of actions that you carry out the same way every time because they've worked out well for you. For example, you get the same ingredients for your favorite dish and cook them in a certain order because you like the taste of the result. Or before going to bed, you set an alarm at 6:30 because this is when you want to get up. Imagine routines as being executed by a wise planner. It's slow and analytical, responsible for strategizing and mental calculations. The planner is aware of the future and carefully considers what kind of result you want. Based on that, it chooses actions to achieve specific outcomes, even if they are uncomfortable, like taking a shower after getting up. Routines can eventually turn into habits, which feel much easier because they're basically a sequence of actions carried out without thinking about them. You've done them so often before that your brain considers them rewarding and a great response to a situation. So a habit can feel like you're on autopilot. You don't have to convince yourself to do something that's a habit, you just do it. The important thing about habits is that they are set in motion by triggers, context cues that can be single things or entire situations that give your brain the signal to start the behavior or action. You already have a lot of triggers in your life, like when you see your phone. You almost always unlock the screen. Or you reach for the seatbelt when you sit in a car. Or when you buy your coffee before work, you also get a cookie even though you aren't actually hungry. Habits are executed by an impulsive toddler. It responds to your immediate desires based on what's around you, without considering any longer-term goals. For the toddler, the future doesn't exist and it hates hard work. So when it notices a trigger, it steers you to take this easy road inside your brain that leads to a familiar, rewarding result. If you get coffee, the toddler also wants the cookie just because that's what you do every morning. This rewarding feeling is also how most of your bad habits started. Chocolate is tasty, browsing Reddit is occasionally mildly entertaining. This is why you repeat these actions, even if they're bad for you. Rewarding feelings associated with an action demand to be repeated, and so a bad habit is born. While the toddler sounds like a built-in sabotage mechanism, it is as important as the wise planner, and actually they work together most of the time. You need your wise planner for thinking big thoughts and parallel parking and doing your taxes. But letting your wise planner do everything would cost too much energy. Outsourcing mundane and repetitive tasks to habits managed by the toddler allows your brain to easily manage your daily life while dealing with more complex mental challenges at the same time. So if we want to change and introduce a new behavior into our lives, we can actually use these energy-saving mechanisms to make it easier. We'll focus on small things, not big ones. Improving your life a little is so much better than aiming high and changing nothing. Especially because small changes can do a lot over months and years. How to build a habit. If you want to make change easier, the best way may not be to force it with willpower, but to convince your brain that it's not that big of a deal. By creating new routines and then turning them into habits. You want your wise planner to construct that first trail and then use your toddler to help initiate the action effortlessly. Let's say you want to work out to be fitter, a very common goal. The first thing to do is to break down this pretty vague goal into clear, separate actions, because the idea is to make the action itself as easy a threshold as possible. So small it's manageable, and so specific that you don't have to think about it a lot. For example, a tangible, controllable action might be doing 10 squats every morning. So you can start by trying to create a routine, but already include clear triggers that the toddler can pick up later on. Remember, a trigger is nothing more than a signal that you always associate with the action. They can be visual pointers like seeing a particular object, like your training outfit, or a certain time of day, or a designated place like a nearby park. Or even better, all of these things combined. The important thing is that you always start doing your action in a specific context. This trigger is the start button that will eventually set off the action automatically. So to establish a home workout habit with 10 squats to begin with, you could make sure to always do them with your exercise gear on at the same place and time, like in your living room at 8 a.m. Once you have your trigger and action, all you need to do is repeat them regularly, ideally every day. If you keep going, they will change from a routine to a habit, from a trail to a highway. Don't get this wrong, the squats will still take you energy to do. But the decision to do them will feel much less like a chore and more like a regular part of your day. While this is simple, it's not easy. Many things you want to turn into habits don't offer as much instant gratification as wasting time on Reddit. To make your new action easier to repeat and more likely to be picked up by the toddler, try to make it pleasurable. Not necessarily by rewarding yourself after you've done it, but by making the action or behavior itself more enjoyable. Like only listening to your favorite podcast while working out, or chipping away at your taxes while you wait for civilization to load the next round. You need to figure out what works for you. In principle, that's it. Frustratingly simple, like most things you can do to make your life better. How long it takes for your toddler to take over and establish a habit varies widely. It depends on the behavior you're trying to get used to, what kind of person you are, your stress levels, and many more things. It takes anything between 15 and 250 days until a new habit is kicked off automatically by its trigger. You won't know how long it will take for you. Starting is the easy part, especially in the first week or two. Continuing to do it every day is the hard part, but it does get easier as you keep going. There are no silver bullets for change, but the science of habits is a reminder that it is possible no matter how old or young you are. Even if you only end up doing a little more good stuff or a few new things, that's still a success. Being a little bit more healthy or knowledgeable is 1,000,000 times better than being unhappy about a thing and changing nothing. In the end, change is a direction, not a destination. So now, hoping we've given you a bit of insight and motivation, here is the thing we made to make this progress easier with design and science. Please bear in mind, you don't need to buy anything to work on yourself. This is optional. Having said that, we struggle with change as much as anyone else, so we've created our own habit journal, as much for ourselves as for you. Before we printed anything, we tested it on ourselves and got feedback from the Kurzgesagt team and experts. The idea is for you to track your habit progress for your desired behavior. There's a tutorial part which guides you through the hardest part of the process step by step. You'll get helpful pointers, reflect on your progress, and how you could make things easier for yourself. Once you get through the tutorial part, the habit journaling starts, regularly interwoven with examples, science breaks, and reflections that we hope will help keep the journey interesting. Like our gratitude journal, it's cloth-bound with an embossed hardcover and printed on high-quality paper. Nice to the touch and with lots of beautiful illustrations, this book is a companion on your personal change journey.
Alright, so like I said, we keeping it going. I'm trying to get as much in here on y'all as I can.
This is you, and this is your first hunch of the season. It's parlay time. With FanDuel, a 3-week free trial of...
This is going to be the video you wish you had 5 years ago. I want to show you how to design your dream life. Got the overhead camera ready to rock, and I think we can do it in 5 steps. Here we go. Step number 1, the dream. Let's just say you're right here. Like any journey, you have a starting point. We'll call this the 1.0 you now. Very first thing we have to do is get crystal clear on who the 2.0 version of you is. We'll call this True North. Now let's take 2 examples of what this looks like so we have some stories and this isn't just some intellectual concept, okay? The first case study, let's call Mary. Mary's True North is she wants to one day run a 7-figure online business inspiring women through holistic health coaching. The second story, let's call Justin. His goal, he's always felt it in his heart of hearts that he wants to be a music producer. His True North, the craziest dream that he can conceive in his 20s, is 5 million downloads on Spotify. He's headlining festivals. He's producing the music and living the life of his dreams. It's called Dream Life for a reason. So for you, what is your dream? A lot of people, they have what's called dream suppression. They feel like they're just a collection of what's happened to them in their past, and it's trivial to try and go for something big. Oh, I gotta be realistic. Oh, I'm too old. I'm too young. It's too much work. I don't know how. Understand that all those right there, the things that stop the most people, are nothing but a story. People worry about being qualified for this. How am I gonna have a 7-figure business and teach people holistic health? I see the DJs playing at these festivals and I'm like, it seems so far away. What the heck? There's a quote by Steve Jobs, #think different. And I just finished reading his biography. Amazing book. It's like, 600 pages. It's a beefcake. Talk about a guy who had no dream suppression. This dude revolutionized 6 different industries: computers, music, phones, animation through Pixar, and 2 others I can't remember. And this book talks about stories of people who were close to him and how did he build the first $1 trillion company to ever exist in the world. He was some 20-something-year-old hippie. Everyone around him is like, dude, you're crazy. You stink, you only eat fruit and vegetables, and you're going to like meditation retreats in India. Yeah, right, dude. You're gonna build a $1 trillion company. He had something called a reality distortion field. Kind of made him an asshole, but he got things done. Because he distorted reality, he became delusional. He was the furthest thing from realistic. He'd go to his engineering team and say, you know, this phone, it's shit. It has a button. We're gonna remove the button. Oh yeah, and I know that's gonna take 2 years, but you're gonna do it in 6 months. Time and time again, they would. Everyone you admire doesn't suppress their dreams, even if it sounds absolute batshit crazy when they say it. So what's your reality distortion field? What's the craziest dream that you can come up with? The ones crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. Now that you have your dream, you're ready for step number 2. You're about to embark on what is called the hero's journey. There's a marketing principle I want to share with you, and it's extremely relevant to what we're talking about. It's literally the best program design advice out there. So if you're thinking about designing a program, whether it's fitness, whether it's wealth, whether it's personal development, anything, amateur people just say, here's a bunch of information on this and now go do it. And that's why most programs suck. Good programs see this at a macro level and they zoom in on these micro steps. It's not one gigantic thing that they have to do, but it's a series of little steps that go in sequence. There's probably 5 to 10 steps if you break it down. And it's the same thing with your goals, same thing with your life, getting to your true north, the 2.0 you. So what are the 5 to 10 steps that if you took and everything in a perfect universe went as planned, would literally get you from where you are now to where you want to be? So in the case of Mary, who wants to be the holistic 7-figure health coach, what are her steps? Step 1, start making content and getting her message out there. Step 2, maybe it's grow an audience to her first 50 to 100,000 people. Step 3, monetize ka-ching so she can leave her full-time job. Step 4, scale that thing to 250,000 people watching her where she's making 500 grand a year. Step 5, she's speaking on stages and now she can actually help people do the exact journey that she went. You can also go in reverse order. Okay, this is the craziest goal I have. What are the steps before that? So in the case of our F-boy DJ Justin, who wants to be selling out festivals, playing on stages, millions of streams on Spotify, his steps would be produce original music, write the first album, Spotify streams at 500K, playing some festivals, getting offers, doing it full time, headlining EDC, or a big music festival. Now look, you could even do an exercise. What are the actions that led you to this state right now? It's okay to be brutally honest with where you're starting. I'd rather you like kind of beat yourself up here and be like, dang, that's a hell of a journey to get there. Mary, our example here, the holistic health 7-figure business owner, one day, she might see an Instagram ad of some person saying, I went from broke to being a millionaire in 12 months, and if you buy my program, I'll teach you how to do the same. And so in her mind, she's like, okay, broke to millionaire in 12 months here. Okay, this is gonna take a year. But in reality, the ad didn't tell her that that person had an extra 5 years experience learning the marketing skill, learning the business, posting content, learning ads that allowed them to go from broke to a millionaire in 12 years. Did it really take that person 12 months to go from broke to a millionaire, or did it really take them 5 years? Sometimes comparing yourself to other people's finished product instead of the first draft is a bit misleading. It's okay if this journey is gonna take you a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. That's what it really takes. But ultimately, is there anything more important than the 2.0 you and true north? You might be thinking to yourself, okay, well, why don't people, if the steps are right in front of them, okay, it's so clear, like I see my path, why do most people quit? I have one word for you to answer that question. Certainty. If I had a crystal ball right now, closest thing I got, this giant crystal shows your future, and we shook it together right here. It was like a magic 8 ball, and it showed you your life, that everything went according to this plan, all 5 to 10 steps, and you were that DJ, you did have that 7-figure business, you did have the 2.0 you, the life of your dreams. It went according to plan. Would you doubt yourself at all? along this journey? How trivial would your self-doubts feel? How pointless would it feel on days where you just don't feel like it? Would you pivot? Would you question what you're here on this planet to do? Or would you work 10 times harder because you're like, holy crap, every step I take, this happens faster and faster and faster, and I'm getting there faster? Guys, that's what being a visionary is. You have to operate as if you saw your life in 5 years from now, and you have to operate with that certainty that it's gonna happen. You know, people think, okay, well, if I knew for sure, Clark, it was gonna happen, then I'd have the confidence to make it happen. But it's reversed. If you had the confidence to make it happen, you didn't let up and you don't quit, then for certain, it's gonna happen. Getting fired up here. It's time for us to address the elephant in the room. You're like, well, Clark, easier said than done. Shit gets real, life happens, things come up that are unexpected. How do you handle those? Most people fail, not because it's not clear, not because they don't want it bad enough, but because they get distracted. They go on a detour or a setback. Now these are different, but I'll explain. Let's say you're on this path right here, you get to step 1, mission accomplished. You go to step 2, you're good. But then right here, you get drawn away to something else. This is what we'll call a detour. You could view them as good. When your GPS reroutes, sometimes it's because it finds a faster route to your destination. When I was in my 20s, I pivoted a ton of times, you know, and I learned a ton about marketing and business and speaking and went to all these events and met cool people. But ultimately, it took me off the path of getting to my goal right here of like the 7-figure dream coaching business and doing what I really love, which is what we're doing here. I didn't waste 2 years, that's not the right word for it, but it definitely, people who started with me here passed me by because they just kept going on the same path, versus when you're pivoting and you're questioning yourself and all these things come up. Another detour is relationships, especially if you're an entrepreneur, man. Having an unsupportive relationship can set you back because it takes so much of your emotional energy. It can drain you, or it can be a distraction. And so what we could call that is maybe you get to here and then you have an unsupportive partner come in your life and they take you on setbacks. So let's talk about Justin and Mary. Mary, our holistic health coach of One Day 7-Figure Business, maybe she's doing it, she makes content, and then life happens. She's in a relationship, she gets married, she has a kid. Kids are great, family is awesome. That's one of the coolest things in life, in my opinion. So maybe her new path, she realizes, oh, holistic health is bigger than just the individual. It stems out into the family. It stems out into your kids. And maybe now with her experience of being a mom, she starts talking and attracts other moms to her content. And she realizes that maybe she doesn't just want to be a holistic health coach, she wants to be a holistic health coach for moms. See how that detour unraveled? Leaning into it, not resisting it, sometimes opens you up to better opportunities that you can't even predict right now. When you look at Steve Jobs' story, he got fired from the company that he started. He was so difficult to work with and people, you know, said he was leading it in a terrible direction. Here's what happened. He goes on and starts a different company. You know what that company was? Pixar. Partners with Disney, makes Toy Story, revolutionizes the digital industry of animation, also starts his other company Next. Different than Apple, but pretty much the same thing. His journey goes on, and Apple one day calls him because they're in trouble. I believe it was they were 90 days away from bankruptcy. So they say, dang, we don't really have any other choice. We gotta give the smelly dude Steve a call. And they do, which they end up acquiring. You know what company? Next. So they use the technology that he had there and incorporated it in. Steve turns the company around, and the rest is history. I mean, we're using their products. You might even be watching me on one right now. All those detours ended up leading to something great. Justin gets pressured from a girlfriend. Dude, you wanna be a DJ? Come on, man. What, are you gonna go to clubs forever? You want that to be your lifestyle? You know, just bring in some income. You can still do your music thing on the side, but you know, you should really like act your age at 25 and start making some money. And pretty soon he comes home from work and he's so emotionally drained because he doesn't actually like his job. He starts looking at the music production equipment and resenting it. He doesn't have the emotional energy to try. Before he knows it, he's 28 and he hasn't produced much. He got stuck on step 3 and he starts to backslide. He starts to feel the pressure of everyone telling him to be realistic and settle. And before you know it, he's right here, no closer to his goal. And hey, if Justin's happy and he shifts his priorities and he's really in his heart truly saying, I don't want that goal anymore. I don't want to be a DJ. You know, that was just something I wanted in my early 20s, but for me now, not for me. Then that's a win. okay, and he has a totally new path. Maybe he changes it all together. But if he's brutally honest in his heart of hearts and he knows that that's what he's supposed to be doing, and he's gonna regret it one day not going for it, then that's a setback. Step 4, I don't know about you, but on planes, I'm the guy who stares at the screen in front of him on the map feature. Okay, I don't know what it is. I love geography, and I'm like zooming in, I'm getting the wind speed, I'm looking at where we're going, and we'll be going from here I am in Phoenix to my home in Seattle, and I'm watching it the whole time, like 2 hours and 30 minutes of this map. I got a problem. And it always makes me think how, yes, it looks like we're going in a straight line from Phoenix to Seattle, but if you zoomed in at the smallest level, like if you were the pilot, they're constantly readjusting. So it's not necessarily a straight line, it's a zigzag. But it's in those readjustments that they actually end up with the same destination. Success is not about commitment as much as it is about recommitment. One personal story on recommitment, just so you know, like this stuff I've seen in my life, it's not just arbitrary theories I'm sharing on YouTube. I know the power of recommitment firsthand. Since I was 12 years old and I heard my first Sum 41 CD coming back from a summer camp, my dream was to become a drummer. I wanted to be in a band. I wanted to tour the world. I would go to all the shows. I would listen to hardcore, metalcore music, everything. Eventually I graduated college, and I thought, to be fully honest, I took too many detours and college was too big of one. My time has passed. My time has gone. And this dream right here, you might as well crumple it up and throw it away. I lost all motivation to drum, really, until I went to a Warped Tour and I saw my buddy. He also posted some drum covers on YouTube. He steps out on stage and he has the exact thing I want. He's playing to a crowd, he's doing what he loves, he gets to tour, he gets to perform, and he gets to drum. I remember feeling so envious, was watching him do the dream that I knew I could have done, but I quit on. What, am I gonna be 50 bitter looking back at myself, wondering why I didn't go for it? That scared me to death. Regret. And right then and there, I recommitted to this dream, to the 2.0. Within 60 days of recommitting, I got a tweet out of nowhere from a band that saw one of my drum covers that I had posted 8 years ago. They said, hey, we need a drummer. Your video was so memorable because it was kind of cringy. Do you want to fly to LA? We're taking a gamble on this one, but we need a drummer. I flew to LA, I auditioned, got the gig, did a tour, and the rest was history. Since then, we did multiple US tours, got to live in a tour bus, got to play on Conan O'Brien, got to tour all around the world. Germany, Download Festival, 20, 30,000 people. I pinch myself every single time I get to go on that stage. I almost want to cry. This shit works. I'm convinced that something metaphysical happens when you recommit. When you recommit, you're sending a signal to the universe. You want this, that this is true, and you're going to do what it takes to get it. The universe, God, the quantum realm, whatever word you want to use, conspires with you once it knows that you're serious. We can't prove that, but that's why it's called faith. What do you need to recommit to? Step 5, you reach the 2.0 version of you. It is so worth it. So let's finish this out with our two people, Mary and Justin. Mary has the dream. She has the journey. She knows there's setbacks and detours, but she recommits. She arrives at this 2.0 version of her. Her friends look at her lifestyle and they wonder, how can you do that? There's a quote that says, entrepreneurs do what others won't so they can live a life that others can't. Meanwhile, Justin quit. I was on tour and I was talking to someone after the show, and it really reminds me of Justin. He comes up to me and he's like, dude, I love the fact that you're drumming. I got so inspired tonight. He was almost in tears. And I'm like, oh, so you drum too? You know, drummer to drummer. That's cool, man. How long you been drumming for? Yeah, you know, I've started when I was 12. Dude, me too. You still drumming? He gets really serious. He says, no. Heavy sigh. In fact, I can barely look at my drums, because every time I pass that room, it reminds me of what I could have done, but I didn't. The dude can't even pick up his drumsticks because he's so defeated in his mind of all the failures, to which I would show him this video. The funny thing about success is that it's not random. Yeah, there's luck. Yeah, there's people who are born with a better hand dealt than you are. But if this is what you want, does focusing on any time that you failed or how life is unfair, does that matter at all? The sobering truth, guys, everything is not your fault. Yeah, that girl was a narcissist and took you off the path. Yeah, your parents didn't support you. Yeah, you weren't born in the best environment. None of that is your fault, and no one's blaming you for that. But it damn sure is your responsibility. Everything in life is your responsibility. What's a more inspiring story? Someone that had everything handed to them and then it all worked out. There was no challenges and he breezed through these 5 steps easily towards his goal, and he's, you know, rich and famous now. That doesn't have any adversity. That's not inspiring. What's inspiring is the recommitment, is committing to this 2.0 vision, is going for it and sticking it out for the long haul. This is the exact process that we design with you in our Metamorphic coaching program. We literally take you from step 1 all the way through these 5 steps and help you create this vision. So if you're blanking right now and you're like, I don't even know who the heck that 2.0 is, I don't even know where to start, like this video inspired me, but I felt something, I just don't know how, then I want to invite you to apply. Don't just wait, don't think about it. Apply down below for a free call with one of our coaches. Have a conversation one-on-one, it's 100% free with you, and at least talk about this game plan, even if you don't go through with our program. And the people that do, I've seen this in our program, literally going through these steps in order, and when they get to the end, they're like, holy crap, I know exactly what to do, and they're almost in tears, because having that level of clarity for the first time, I've seen it in my own life. That is what it's all about. Something one of my coaches said, he said, Clark, if not now, when? And if not you, who? I believe in you. Go crush this. Stop settling. Start living. See you guys.
There's this idea in Jungian psychology called the circumambulation.
All right,
and
guys,
Jung
let
had
me
this
try
idea
another
that
video up in here.
you had a potential future self, which would be in potential everything that you could be, and that it manifests itself moment to moment in your present life by making you interested in things. And the things that you're interested in are the things that would guide you along the path that would develop. Now, it sounds like a metaphysical idea or a mystical idea even, but it's not. It's not. It's a really profoundly biological idea. The idea is something like, well, you're set up so that you're automatically interested in those things that would fully expand you as a well-adapted creature. Well, like, there's nothing radical about that idea. What else could possibly be the case unless there's something fundamentally flawed about you? That is what the situation would be. It's kind of interesting to think about how that would be manifest moment to moment, but the idea is something like, well, your interest is captured by those things that lead you down the path of development. Well, that better be the case. Okay, so that's fine. And so there's some utility in pursuing those things that you're interested in. That's the call to adventure, let's say. And the call to adventure takes you all sorts of places. Now, the problem with the call to adventure is, like, what the hell do you know? You might be interested in things that are kind of warped and bent. And often it's the case that when new parts of people manifest themselves and grip their interests, say, they do it very badly and shoddily. And so you stumble around like an idiot when you try to do something new. That's why the fool is the precursor to the savior from the symbolic perspectives, because you have to be a fool before you can be a master, and if you're not willing to be a fool, then you can't be a master. So you're gonna, it's an error-ridden process, and that's also laid out in the Old Testament stories, because the first thing that happens to all these patriarchal figures when God kicks them out of their father's house when they're like 84 is that they run into all sorts of trouble, and some of it's social and some of it's natural and some of it's a consequence of their own moral inadequacy. So they're fools. But the thing that's so interesting is that despite the fact that they're fools, they're still supposed to go on the adventure, and that they're capable of learning enough as a consequence of moving forward on the adventure so that they straighten themselves out across time. And so it's something like this. So this circumambulation that Jung talked about was this continual, we'll return to this continual circling in some sense of who you could be. You might notice, for example, that there are themes in your life. You know, when you go back across your experiences, you see you kind of have your typical experience that sort of repeats itself. And there might be variation on it, like a musical theme, but it's like you're circling yourself and getting closer to yourself as you move across time. That's the circumambulation. Now, remember that for a second, as we'll go back to it. Okay, so imagine that something glimmers before you. It's an interest that's dawning, and you decide, well, first of all, you're paralyzed. You think, well, how do I know if I should pursue that? It's probably a stupid idea. And the proper response to that is, you're right, it probably is a stupid idea, because almost all ideas are stupid. And so the probability that as you move forward on your adventure that you're going to get it right the first time is zero. It's just not going to happen. And so then you might think, well, maybe I'll just wait around until I get the right idea, and which people do, right? So they're like 40-year-old, 13-year-olds, which is not a good idea. So they wait around until
It's waiting for Godot until they finally got it right. But the problem is you're too stupid to know when you've got it right. So waiting around isn't going to help, because even if the perfect opportunity manifested itself to you in your incomplete form, the probability that you would recognize it as the perfect opportunity is 0. You might even think it's the worst possible idea that you've ever heard of anywhere. Highly likely. Highly likely. So you have, there's, Nietzsche called that a will to stupidity, which I really like. So, because he thought of stupidity as being you have to take it into account fundamentally and work with it. And so you can take these tentative steps on your pathway to destiny, and you can assume that you're going to do it badly. And that's really useful, because you don't have to beat yourself up. It's pretty easy to do it badly. But the thing is, it's way better to do it badly than not to do it at all. And that's a continual message that echoes through these historical stories in Genesis. It's like, these are flawed people. They should have got the hell out of their house way before they did. And they go out and they stumble around in tyranny and famine and self-betrayal and violence. But it's a hell of a lot better than just rotting away at home. And that's great, so that's good. And so why is that? Well, okay, so you start your path and you think that you're heading, towards your star. And so you go in that direction. And then, because you're here, the world looks a particular way, but then when you move here, the world looks different, and you're different as a consequence of having made that voyage. And so what that means is that now that thing that glimmers in front of you is going to have shifted its location, because you weren't very good at specifying it to begin with, and now that you're a little sharper and more focused than you were, it's going to reveal itself with more accuracy to you. And so then you have to take it's almost like a 180-degree reversal. But it isn't, because, you've gone this far, and that's a long ways to get that far. But that's a lot farther than you would be if you just stayed where you were, waiting. And so it doesn't matter that you overshoot continually, because as you overshoot, even if you don't learn what you should have done, you're going to continually learn what you shouldn't keep doing. And if you learn enough about what you shouldn't keep doing, then that's tantamount at some point to learning at the same time what you should be doing. So it's okay. So it's like this. Now, what's cool about it, though, I think, is that as you progress, the degree of overshooting starts to decline, right? And that we know that. There's nothing hypothetical about that. As you learn a new skill, like even to play a song on the piano, for example, you overshoot madly. You're making all sorts of mistakes to begin with, and then the mistakes, they disappear. There's a great TED Talk, I think it was, about this guy set up a really advanced computational recording system in his home and recorded every single utterance his young child made while learning to speak. And then he put together the child's attempts to say certain phonemes and put them in a list, and you can hear the child deviating madly to begin with, and then after hundreds and hundreds of repetitions just zeroing right in on the exact phoneme. So, you might not know this, but when kids babble, because they start babbling when they're quite young, they babble every human phoneme, including all sorts of phonemes that adults can't say. And then they die into their language, so that after they learn, say, English, then there's all sorts of phonemes they can no longer hear or pronounce, but to begin with, it's all there, which is really quite interesting. But so as they learn a particular language, they zero in on the proper way to pronounce that, and their errors minimize. And every time you learn something, that's how it is. And that's really useful to know, too, because it means that it's okay to wander around stupidly before you fix your destination. Now, you see that echoed in Exodus, right? Because what happens is that the Egyptians, or the Hebrews, escape a tyranny, which is kind of whatever you do personally and psychologically when you escape from your previous set of stupidly held and ignorant and stubborn axioms. It's like, away from that tyranny. It's like, great, I freed myself from that. Well, then what? Well, you think, well, now I'm on the way. No, you're not. Now you're in the desert, where you wander around stupidly you know, and worship the wrong things until you finally organize yourself morally again and head in the proper direction. So that's worth knowing too, because you think, well, I got rid of a lot of things, baggage, excess baggage that I didn't need in my life, and now everything's okay. It's like, no, it's not. You've got rid of a whole set of scaffolds that were keeping you in place, even though they were pathological. Now you have nothing, and nothing actually turns out to be better than something pathological, but you're still stuck with the problem of nothing, and that's exactly why Exodus is structured the way that it is. It's that you escape from a tyranny. It's, hooray, we're no longer slaves. Yeah, well, now you're nihilistic and lost. It's not necessarily an improvement. But it is see, it's also useful to know that, because you can also be deluded into the idea that, imagine that you're trying to become enlightened, which might mean to turn all those parts of you on that could be turned on. You think, well, that's just a linear pathway uphill. You know, it's just from one success to another. No, it's not. It's like, here you are and you're not doing too badly, and the first step is a complete bloody catastrophe. It's worse. And then maybe you can pull yourself together and you hit a new plateau, and then that crumbles and shakes, and bang, it's worse again. And so, because part of the reason that people don't become enlightened is because it's punctuated by intermittent deserts, essentially, by intermittent catastrophes. And if you don't know that, well, then you're basically screwed, because you go ahead on your movement forward and you collapse and you think, well, that didn't work, I collapsed. It's like, no, that's par for the course. It's not indication that you failed, it's just indication that it's really hard. And that when you learn something, you also unlearn something. And the thing you unlearned is probably useful, and unlearning it actually is painful. You know, let's say if you have to get out of a bad relationship. There isn't any relationship that's 100% bad. And so when you jump out of it, well, maybe you're in better shape, but you're still lonesome and disoriented, and you don't know what your past was, and you don't know what your present is, and you don't know what your future is. That's why people stay with the devil they know instead of, you know, looking for the devil they don't know. So anyways, the fact that you're full of faults doesn't mean you have to stop. And thank God for that. That's a really useful thing. And the fact that you're full of faults doesn't mean that you can't learn. And so you can posit an ideal, and you're going to be wrong about it, but it doesn't matter, because what you're right about is positing the ideal, moving towards it. If the actual ideal isn't conceptualized perfectly, well, first, surprise, surprise, because, like, what are you going to do that's perfect? So it doesn't matter that it's imperfect. It just matters that you do it and that you move forward. So that's really positive news as far as I'm concerned, because you can actually do that, right? You can do it badly. Anyone can do that. So that's useful. Okay, so like if you were an efficient person, you would have just done that. But you're not. But who cares? You know, you still end up in the same place. And maybe the trip is even more interesting. Who knows? Probably too interesting. Jung. I began to understand that the goal of psychic development, by which he means psychological development or spiritual development, is the self. There's no linear evolution. There's only a circumambulation of the self, a getting closer. It's like you're spiraling into something. Something like that. And the thing that you're spiraling into recedes as you move towards it and gets more and more sophisticated and well developed as you move towards it, because you're not going to run out of goals, right? No matter how much you have your act together, there's probably, undoubtedly, 30 dimensions along which you could get your act together a lot more. So, and some of those aren't even conceivable to you when you're in your initial uncarved state, let's say.
Being a human being is not easy as opposed to an animal, because we're born and nobody gives us like a direction. Our parents might be a little bit, our college, teachers, etc., mentors, but generally we're on our own. And it's a very, very difficult process. You wake up in the morning and you don't really know what you can do. You can choose 12 different paths. It can be very confusing and very overwhelming. When you find that sense of purpose, when you find what I call your life's task, everything has a direction, everything has a purpose, your energy is concentrated. It's not like you're just going down a single narrow pathway. It's not like life becomes boring and it's just about discipline and solving problems. It's actually the most exciting thing that can ever happen to you, because you never have that lost feeling. You wake up in the morning and you go, yeah, this is what I need to accomplish. People come at you with all kinds of distractions and boring and irritating things. You're able to cut it out. It's just the most marvelous piece of internal radar that you can have. So I genuinely wish that everybody can find that kind of internal radar. And so it's not easy, and I understand that. There's no like instant formula, because we're all about instant formulas. It's difficult, and I want you to know that, so it's not like Robert can give me the answer in 3 minutes. No, I can't. But there's a process involved. It's not, a mystery. You can't follow a very singular process. And the idea is, you were talking about childhood. The way I like to frame it is, when you were born, you are a phenomenon. You are unique. Your DNA has never occurred in the history of the universe, going back billions of years. It will never occur in the future. Your life experience with your parents and everything that you experience in your early years going on up is unique. It's yours. You're one of a kind, right? So that is your source of power. To waste that is just the worst thing you can do in your life. And what the power is finding that uniqueness. What makes you you, and how you can mine that, and how you can go deep into it and use that to create a career path, right? And so I tell people, when you're a child, when you're 4 or 5 or even younger, you have what the great psychologist Maslow called impulse voices. They're little voices in your head that say, I love this, I hate that. I like this food, I don't like when mommy moves this way, I like when daddy comes from here. You're very cued into who you are and what you like and what you don't like. And these voices kind of direct you in certain ways, right? And when you're very young, they direct you towards intellectual, mental pursuits as well. And there's a book I recommend for everybody. It's Howard Gardner's 5 Frames of Mind. It's helped me immensely. The idea is, he talks about 5 forms of intelligence. Our problem is we think of intelligence as mostly intellectual, but there are many forms of intelligence. There's the intelligence that has to do with words. There's abstract intelligence that has to do with patterns and mathematics. There's kinetic intelligence that has to do with the body. There's social intelligence. He has 5 of them. And the idea is, your brain naturally veers towards one of them. It can veer towards 2 of them, that happens, but generally one of them kind of dominates, right? And it's like a grain in your brain that's going in a certain direction. You want to go with that grain, and because that's where your power will lie. So when you're young, if you go back and think about when you were 4 or 5, you can maybe get a picture of some kind of direction or voice inside of you that was impelling you towards this. I know for me, it was words. I can remember when I was 6 years old, I was just obsessed with words, just the letters in words, almost like in this almost slightly schizophrenic way. I would spell words backwards, I would take them apart, I would do anagrams, I love palindromes, right? So I had a thing about words and language. It's very primal. Some people, Albert Einstein, when he was 4 years old, his father gave him a birthday gift of a compass. And he was just mesmerized by this compass. The idea that there are invisible forces out there in the cosmos moving this needle. And he's obsessed with the idea of invisible forces. Steve Jobs, when he was like 7 or 8 or maybe younger, in Burlingame, California, his father, they passed by a store with technological devices in the window. And he was just hypnotized by the design of those devices and the glass tubes and everything. So he wanted to go in that direction. Tiger Woods saw his father hitting golf balls in the garage, and he was just like screaming with joy. He had to do that, right? I could give you a million different examples of this. Of course, these are people who are famous, obviously. We can go back and find that. It's easier. But what happens to you, and please cut me off if I'm going on too long.
No,
here.
please continue.
Okay.
Please.
What happens to you is you're 7, now you're getting older, and you're starting to not hear that voice anymore. You're hearing the voice of your teachers telling you, you're not good at this field, you need to get better at math. You shouldn't be interested in these sports or anything, you should be going this way. Your parents are starting to tell you this is the career they want for you, or the direction they want you to go in, right? You start hearing that more than your own voice. And as you get older, it gets worse and worse and worse. Then when you're a teenager, it's all about what other people are doing, your peers, what's cool, what's not cool, you know? And that kind of is more, so all of this noise enters your brain and you can't hear that anymore. You don't know who you are. And so you go to college, you kind of maybe choose a major that seems practical, that your parents want you to go into. Maybe you kind of wander around, you're not sure. And then you enter the work world without that inner radar that I'm talking about. And brother, you're lost, right? Where should I go? Well, I need to make money, right? And so you make a choice based on the need to make a lot of money. Not everyone, but some people do that. And I understand that need. We all need to make a living. But that can set you off on a very bad path because you're not connected emotionally. The thing is, when you figure out that primal inclination, that grain that's inside of you, then you have the energy to be disciplined, to go through boring tasks, to learn. You learn at a faster rate because you're emotionally engaged. When you're emotionally engaged in a subject, the brain learns twice, 3 times, 4 times as fast as when you're not. I always give the example. In college, I studied foreign languages, which was kind of a passion of mine. For 3 or 4 years, I studied French, and then I went to Paris, and I couldn't speak a word. It was useless because it didn't teach me anything practical, right? I was totally confused. But I was in Paris, and I loved it, and I wanted to live there, right? And I had a girlfriend, and I needed to speak French to her. And I can tell you, in 1 month, I learned more than those 4 years of university because I wanted to, because I was engaged. My emotions were there. It was like I had to survive to learn French. Whereas, so most of us, we don't have a need really to learn this subject. We're paying half attention. But when you find that thing that really connects to you, you're paying deep attention. Your emotions are engaged. You're learning at a much faster rate. Okay? And so the thing is, how do you find that when you're older? When you're 21, I give people a lot of help, and it's usually not so difficult. We can go through that process. It gets harder when you're 30 and you've been wandering around, but it's not impossible. I didn't really find my exact path until I was 38, 39, to be honest. So there's hope. When you get 40 and you get 50, it gets more and more difficult, right? And it's very sad if you wasted that seed of uniqueness that I'm talking about. And I tell people there are ways of going back, and we go through a process like archaeology. We have to dig and dig and dig and find those bones from your childhood that indicated what you were meant to do. But when you find your life's task, everything opens up. It doesn't mean you figured out, okay, I've got to aim for this particular job when I'm 28. That's not how it works. It gives you a sense of direction. You can try different things. You can experiment. You can have fun when you're in your 20s. You're going to learn skills. But it gives you an overall framework instead of, whoa, all of this confusion, this chaos, social media, the internet, I could go here, here, here. You're lost at sea. It gives you a very important sense of direction, a compass.
All right.
As you describe this, I have this image of, you mentioned animals.
So we coming up on our last 10 minutes. Today we've been talking about planning and execution. I wanted to get some more gameplay time. I wanted to get some more gameplay time in for myself, so I let the videos play. But I'm gonna talk for a couple seconds. So the videos that I let play are just about grabbing hold of those things that we can control in our lives and actually formulating a process to get them handled, get them taken care of, or just to enjoy them. That process is what is giving us our most effective existence here as far as living goes. So plan, and don't forget to execute on those steps that are getting you closer to your goal, getting you closer to what it is that you want to do. And with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and get up out of here. For today, I'm gonna put on one more last message. Let me see. Yeah, I'm gonna give us one last message, and then I'm up out of here. And I will see y'all tomorrow for our music talk. Yeah, you know we talk about something music related every Tuesday, so I will be back. This is DGTA TV.
We believe in a future where every person has the opportunity.
Appreciate y'all for stopping through.
But to get ahead, building up the middle class will be a defining goal of my presidency.
Also has the ability to inspire others to much greater effort than they would have expended had they been left to their own devices. Both are needed in any true definition of leadership.
I'll see y'all tomorrow.
Adair goes on to say, Abraham Zelznick, a professor at the Harvard Business School, has been attempting to sort things out. Leaders, he says, dramatic and unpredictable in style. They tend to create a climate of change, sometimes not unlike chaos. They're often obsessed by their ideas, which appear visionary and consequently excite, stimulate, and drive other people to work hard and create reality out of fantasy. And he considers Lee Iacocca such a leader also. Managers, Zelznick continues, are typically hardworking, analytical, tolerant, and fair-minded. They take much pride in perpetuating and improving upon the status quo, stemming from their strong sense of belonging to the organization. Such executives concentrate on process, whereas leaders focus on substance. Professor Zelznick, then, seems to think that you're either a leader or a manager, but that is an oversimplification that obscures the truth. The best chief executives are both. You can assess your leadership qualities simply by looking at the success of anything you're in charge of. But it's very true. Every organization, from the smallest to the largest, is a reflection of its leadership, and maintaining a high order of truly excellent leadership is one of the toughest jobs in business. Emerson wrote, "There is a time in every man's education when he arrives at the conviction that envy is ignorance, that imitation is suicide, that he must take himself, for better or worse, as his portion, and that though the wide universe is full of good, no kernel of nourishing corn can come to him but through the toil bestowed on that plot of ground which is given him to till. The power which resides in him is new in nature, and none but he knows what that is which he can do, nor does he know until he's tried. Trust thyself. Every heart vibrates to that iron string." There is a bit of advice that a person would do well to reflect upon every morning of his life. No one can even estimate the number of people who live nervous, anxious, unhappy lives because they daily attempt the impossible, which is to be like someone else. There are people who don't realize the truth of Emerson's words that envy is ignorance, that imitation is suicide. He must have used the word suicide because we have to kill that which is natural in ourselves when we attempt to be like someone else. They need to recognize the truth also that the power that resides in them is new in nature, that it has never appeared before in just that way on earth, that if they'll learn about and develop their own powers, they'll have no need of envy or imitation. Envy is ignorance because it means a person is ignorant of his own powers and abilities, his one-of-a-kind natural talent. He's never looked within himself for his own road to greatness, but instead seeks it in the lives of others. And when he fails to succeed, as do those he envies, as fail he must because he can't possibly be exactly like them, his image of himself shrinks. Not understanding that he is unlike those he envies, he doesn't realize that this simple fact lies at the bottom of his failure. Nor does he understand that he can be as successful as anyone on earth if he will build upon that power that resides in him. As Emerson put it, the power which resides in him is new in nature, and none but he knows what that is which he can do, nor does he know until he's tried. This is why a parent is off base when he says to a child, "Why aren't you like so-and-so, like a brother or some model child? Look what he's doing." The parent doesn't understand that it's a human impossibility for the child to be like so-and-so and to do what he does in the same way. Instead, a parent would be wise to say, don't worry about so-and-so. He's found his strength, and he's building on it.